Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Room. I am Chase. You can find me on Twitter at Trophy Chase TFDR. And as always, my man Cody, where can they find you at?
Y'all can find me on Twitter at Cody Smith TFDR. You can check us out where you should be on the Fantasy Draft Room, on YouTube, on podcasts, wherever you can get them. Joint account for Twitter is at _TFDR. You can also DM us on Discords if you want those and want to ask us any questions throughout. Either leave them in the comments, also like and subscribe when you do, or you can find us over on Discord. We'll respond to you there. And I think that's all we got to plug, man. Let's get into this thing.
Yes, sir. So we did a mock draft kicking off for 2023. We're no more doing mid-season startups. This is a mock draft for 2023 with 2023 rookie picks. Now, we know that there's a bunch of news and stuff like that has happened. So we'll dive into some of that throughout the draft as well. But at least wanted to kick things off with a mock draft for 2023. Had some great people join. It was fun to see the board and kind of how things panned out. So let's dive right in and kind of see what this thing looks like. So this was the first 3 rounds of what we had for 2023. So pretty chalk. We had 10 quarterbacks in the first round, with the exception of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson being the first wide receiver off the board. Anything stand out to you here? I mean, this has been pretty much what we've seen so far. It is these quarterbacks, and that's pretty much it. Like, that's all you want in the first right now.
Truthfully, we need to get some new blood in here. We need to get some of those RB is king guys in here. Or some, Travis Kelce in the first round. These first round's been the same every single time. 8 quarterbacks, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. The only thing that's changing is where the quarterbacks are going. And even in this one, I've seen a lot of Patrick Mahomes as the 101 overall talk. We didn't get that here. We did still get Josh Allen holding on to the 101, but I've seen a lot of chatter across Twitter that it is now Patrick Mahomes again. He has returned to his throne. This one didn't have that, so I'm glad to have him here at the 102. But the rest of the quarterback board, I mean, you have your top 6, 7 guys. You went with Deshaun here. And then the 2 wide receivers and three more to wrap us up. Not too much changing here.
Yeah, when we saw the startup draft, the actual startup with the 4D community, we saw Tua and Fields going ahead of Kyler. Really happy to see Kyler go ahead here. But again, it's just a few picks different. Dak back into the first round here now. I look at the pick that I took when I took Deshaun, and I'm just like, maybe it's the past stuff and just seeing him play Sunday, it didn't feel great. And maybe I would have taken a different quarterback in that spot. So we'll see how Watson pans out. But it is those 10, 11 quarterbacks. And in all honesty, I wouldn't be shocked as this offseason goes on that you see Tua in the first with Dak, and then you'll see like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson at the turn there at the 12, and then the 2-1. And this is third round reversal, just so everyone does know. 12-team Superflex. 1.75 tight end premium with a third round reversal. So, that 12 pick does get the 301 to kick things off. So just to kind of clarify that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing those 11 quarterbacks go in the first when it's all said and done. If you miss out on that, like legitimately Trevor Lawrence is your QB1 if you're doing a startup like this.
That's it. And then the only other one you're really taking is Trey Lance or a rookie pick. Here we see our first rookie picks come off 101 in the middle of the first round here, and then projected quarterback. Now, who's that quarterback going to be? A little bit of controversy, but we do see the 102 taken, which you would assume is probably going to be a rookie QB, and then Trey Lance. And other than that, you don't get any more quarterbacks. So, we do have Barry's draft here. Through 3 rounds and no quarterbacks, and it starts out sketchy, but I think he actually wraps this one up pretty good here. And we'll break this one down a little bit more and reveal the next couple of rounds. But man, it is desolate at quarterback. And if you don't have one of those top 7 startup picks, again, we've repeated this one. I think every time we've done one of these startup mocks, you just do not feel good if you don't have one of the first 6, first 5, first 7 picks in the draft.
Yeah, even again, taking Watson there, I wanted to kind of challenge myself at the 7, and I'm just like, do I take Watson? Do I take Kyler? Do I go after a Justin Jefferson? Because it feels like there's a tier break after that first 6, and then you have the next 5 guys. But the second you talk about what Barry did with Jefferson, Tyreek, and Kelsey, and you're like, oh, you got those 3 pieces. That feels really good. But again, you are taking a gamble at this point where it's like, are you going to get 2 quarterbacks that you're comfortable with rolling into the season? We've seen, so far this year, there are leagues that we're in where, quarterbacks are king, and then there's leagues where you have guys that are piecing together quarterback, and they look like the clear leaders in the as we kind of approach these fantasy playoffs. But yeah, man, I think the one thing I want to point out here with the rookie picks, the 101, 102, 103 off the board. So we can assume that's Bijan. Bijan being the first running back off the board. How do you feel about that?
It's spicy, but I mean, who else are we going to throw up there at this point, man? Like, I think with it being a true 101, this is not a draft where we are saying, hey, you are actually taking Bijan, right? Like, we're not going to be doing those. Probably we might do one here before we actually get full declares and everything like that. But it's hard to do those before the draft because you just don't know where these guys are going to land, right? Like, you could be taking Bijan and a month from now, Bijan goes down. We're not even going to say with what, sickness probably. He just has a little cough. That's what he's going down with. And then you're holding a Bijan share that's definitely not worth a mid-second startup pick anymore. So holding the 101 is just a lot of insulation of value right now with where we are in the draft season, and way too early draft season yet at this point for 2023 startups. But assuming it is Bijan, I just don't know who else you have up there. I mean, it's a bunch of the younger guys. I mean, the next one off the board you would assume here is being Breece and then Taylor. Breece is coming off his injury. Jonathan Taylor, he's been better now throughout the probably second half of what we've seen so far from him through the season, but still not producing like an RB1 overall. I mean, you can't deny the talent that Bijan has, the tape that he's put on the field in college, and assuming he's a first-round draft pick, I kind of don't see why we wouldn't have him at the first running back off the board.
Yeah, it's hard to argue the value right now with what we've seen from him in college. Obviously, landing spot's going to play a lot. He's going to get draft capital. I don't see a world in which that doesn't happen. So you got, Bijan, Breece Hall, JT, Javonte Williams was a bit spicy for me. That's torn ACL, LCL as well. As in case people did not know that does complicate the recovery process for an ACL. So that one's a little spicy for me. And then Kenneth Walker, all young guys, right? All young running backs. But JT's been an RB2 this year. Breece Hall looked good, showed promise, torn ACL. Kenneth Walker looked good, showed promise. What is he? We really don't know. Is he going to get passing work? It's so hard for me to take running back early. And like, we'll dive into the next few picks here in a moment, but man, I just don't know if I want to take a running back in these first 3 rounds. I don't want to be tied to a running back in the first 3 rounds.
It's scary. Like, you've got Javonte and Breece both suffering season-ending injuries, and they are 2 of your top projected 5 running backs off the board here. Assuming Bijan probably going, I mean, even if he has something he goes down with, probably could still go in the top 101, 102, 103 picks overall with how infatuated we all are with Bijan. But 2 of the 5 of them have already suffered season-ending injuries. The other 2 have been out for extended periods of time already this year. And you compare that to the board of the wide receivers. I counted them up here. We've got 13 wide receivers off the board through the first 3 rounds compared to 5, and only 1 of them is out for the season, and that's Cooper Kupp. And he was producing like a top 5 wide receiver before he got injured.
And I think he's just out for his season. If the Rams were actually a playoff team, I think the tightrope surgery that he had with his high ankle sprain, he would be back, I think, for the playoffs technically. At least it's right real close to that time frame. But yeah, he's done for his season. He's done for the fantasy season too. Like, there's no need.
Yeah, no chance of that one. Back. And they're not rushing him back. I mean, truthfully, speaking of just NFL things, why are they even picking up Baker? Like, let's just pay Baker $1 million as a rental. That way we can get through the season a little bit more cleanly, and we might pick up like 1 or 2 more wins, even though Baker's probably not even good enough to do that. Like, I really don't understand why they didn't just either let him clear waivers, because not another team put in a waiver claim on him. And so, like, why are you paying him over $1 million just to be your rental for the year when it's a lost season? I
Because
can't really
they
understand
knew
that one.
they knew for a fact that if they let him go clear on waivers, that he was not coming to LA to be the quarterback there. So again, I get it because it's a total L for the year for the Rams in this offense, and looking at Cooper Kupp going in the third here, I'm okay with that. Like for that Rams offense and everything too. It sucks. Like it is what it is. But at the start of next season, Cooper Kupp is still going to produce. There's no long term concerns about his health with the surgery that he's having. So yeah, I'm good with Cooper Kupp right there. I did want to look at the wide receivers because I'm good with the first 5, I believe, off the board, 6 off the board with Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins right there in the 7 slot. A little bit high for me. Tyreek, Adams, Kupp, Amon-Ra, DK, and Olave. I have T. Higgins a little closer to that Olave, more towards the wide receiver 10, 12, 13 range versus 7.
I actually picked out that spot as you were walking through that. I picked out that same exact spot. I would have plopped him. I think I would still have taken T over the Olave pick that I took there at the 311.
Same.
But that's it's a round, 7 wide receivers. All of these guys are kind of the same. You're just kind of playing a difference in how you're wanting to build your team, right? Especially this early. Do you want more of the youth, or do you want? We see this next little stack of 3 guys of Hill, Adams, and Kupp, all the older but still producing guys. And I think the only reason that Kupp did slide behind the rest of them is because of the ankle surgery. Otherwise, he'd still be right up there at the top as far as. Would you say, let's paint the picture where Kupp does play the rest of this year out and on pace for what they were doing with the season that Tyreek is putting up? Do you think there's a chance we would have seen Tyreek jump Kupp?
Honestly, Tyreek's a steal for me here. I would take Tyreek over Jalen Waddle. Like again, youth startup looking at next year. I would have probably Tyreek, Diggs, Kupp, Adams. Like if you're looking at the old guys, but I can't fault you for wanting to take Kupp. I couldn't fault you for wanting to take Tyreek or Diggs or Adams. Like Adams is just the one that's a little bit older than the rest, and so I get his value falling a bit. But I felt like at that point in the draft that Tyreek was an absolute steal. And I don't want to knock T. Higgins, like the pick itself. I do think that if he becomes a 1 somewhere, you're just waiting a year. Like you're getting through 2023, hoping he doesn't re-sign in Cincinnati, and that he has the opportunity to become a true 1 without Jamar Chase on the field. Because while he can do great things, when you have both of them out there, usually one of them produces and the other one does not. So just a tough situation for next year.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to see because, we're looking here in the 3rd round and I'm thinking Kupp or Tyreek, but I was thinking back to our first startup mock that we did. And I was wondering about a month and a half ago, before the Kupp injury, where was Kupp going? And in that one, Kupp came off at the 201. So if I was actually just pondering if I was going to take Kupp or Tyreek if Kupp was still healthy, yeah, I think we might have let Tyreek fall a little bit in this one, to be honest.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Cooper Kupp at the 201. Again, that was a mid-season startup, a little bit different because you're using the points for this year.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, again, you probably couldn't fault him if he had been playing and he continued to put on pace for what he was putting up. I think that's fair to say that Kupp would have gone a lot higher. And I think if Kupp comes off the board, you maybe see Tyreek come off the board too. So let me pull up the next rounds. Is there anything else you want to cover in the first 3?
No, I think the only thing here that's left to touch on is the tight end room, and that's Kelsey, Andrews, and Pitts. And this has been, again, kind of status quo from what we've seen all the way back from when we did that first one. The major difference is Pitts has slid a full 1 pick over a round, actually. He is now a pick in 1 slot, or a round and 1 pick lower than he was back a month and a half ago when we were doing the midseason startup. Just continues to slide down the board. Kelsey and Andrews continue to stay at the top, and they only shifted back 1 place each from our last one to this one. So Pretty status quo there at the top, but I'm real interested. As I know, I said this last week in our one we broke down with the 40 chess guys' startup. I'm really interested to see how far Pitt starts to slide in these offseason and these startup mocks, because he hasn't put anything on the field, and it's starting to get a little bit dicey if we don't start to see something coming up here in the third year of his career, because
I'm going to pull up
that's
the next
normally the
slide.
time we see them, break out. But we've also seen a lot of these rookies start to do a lot more than Pitts even this year.
Yeah, I'm going to pull up the next slide while I kind of look at that too, just so we can kind of start looking at the board. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. I mean, we talked about it today. Like, if you are a team trying to get Travis Kelce, would you give Kyle Pitts and a mid first for Kelce? And then we were like, yeah, we would give that up. On the flip side, if we had Travis Kelce, would you sell Travis Kelce for Pitts and a first? And it was a resounding no, which is crazy. And it's a one round difference essentially in startup value. But hey, here we are.
Here we are, man. Like I said last week, I kind of felt a little crazy saying it, but I could see him starting to slip into mid 4, mid 5, because especially if we get to a point, I don't want to say it, but if Mariota goes back, like I've been saying, man, that will be the final blade that sinks him to like round 5.
It hurts me just to hear you say that. Speaking of other guys from Atlanta that would be truly upset about Mariota playing there again next year, is Drake London coming off the board there in the fourth round. So we see the 104 right there at the turn. We got the aging running backs kind of pulling out here. Have some of our young wide receivers with London, Pittman, Garrett Wilson, DJ Moore still up here. 105, 106, 107. So as we get through here, another tight end run, which was a bit surprising for me. Again, it is tight end premium, 1.75. What kind of stands out to you as we've gotten through 6 rounds now?
I think these pick values are standing out to me a little bit. Putting these, projected from the mocks that we've been doing over at Destination Devi, our 103 right now, I believe consensus is Stroud as of right now. The 104 is Jahmyr Gibbs. So you're looking here at the 3-4 turn. Would you rather have Kenneth Walker right now or what could become Jahmyr Gibbs? We again want to establish that we do have the security of what this pick is until we actually do the draft post NFL draft. We're not the absolute. I can't do those ones that you do it before. I get fully putting your claim and stake on these guys, but I can't do it. So, but the one projected 104 here, going right behind Kenneth Walker, it might actually be a little bit high for me on the pick side of things, because I know what these guys do. I'm a little bit anti-rookie, a little bit anti-pick, and what can I flip that pick into whenever we're coming up to the draft season, and can I flip a 104 into Kenneth Walker, Drake London, and Michael Pittman?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I don't think I'm getting it straight up either. Maybe it's just right now, our rookie values are a little bit deflated right now, and maybe we'll get that rookie fever rolling back up, and we'll start to, see 104 for Drake London reroll, Michael Pittman reroll. I think you could actually see. I don't think it's too far off, but it's still a little bit high for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I think as this class comes into full picture, we'll have an idea of who's actually there. There's been a lot of talk of A-Rich now declaring for the draft, and then we still have Will Levis. So there is still the possibility that the 104 ends up being a quarterback if they get draft capital. So, we picture it as Jahmyr Gibbs because that's where our ADP has him right now. But if that ends up being a quarterback, like maybe it's a little more justifiable.
Truthfully, like if we do see Will Levis get top 5 draft capital, if we get, Anthony Richardson getting top 20, 22 overall draft capital, I'd be hard pressed not to throw them up there at that 104 slot. Lock up my second QB here. I forget if he's going to take one here in these rounds 7 through 10, but whatever, you're sitting right there with Josh Allen, and he may have been thinking that, I'm going to take whatever quarterback's available there for me whenever the time comes, or maybe flip that pick into a different quarterback. Go flip it into Kirk Cousins. I mean, Kirk Cousins is going behind the 104. You should be able to flip the 104 for Kirk Cousins, right? So, maybe that is the process, and locking up that second QB could be a pretty good pick for the guy in the first draft slot here.
And the fun part is we get to look at this and analyze this throughout the entire offseason. So we'll be able to see how things shift and adjust and really where these player values end up and these pick values end up. And, I think the big thing that stands out for these rounds is we get a ton of, wide receivers off the board here. And like once you really get down to the end of the 6th round, I mean, you're looking at George Pickens, DeAndre Hopkins, Hollywood, like, again, good players, but we're starting to get towards the end of that wide receiver 2 tier into the wide receiver 3 tier. And that's where it's like, you want to make sure you have, I want to say 2, but like it's either 2 top guys or 3 guys that you feel really good in from that wide receiver 2, but just before that wide receiver 3 range. And like even I, like looking at my board right here, having Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson, like I got Devontae, feel great about it, like Garrett Wilson and what he could be, just polar opposites, and it doesn't feel great just coming away with those two, being honest. Like I look back at this Joe Mixon pick, I probably would have taken Diop. I probably would have taken some other options there at that 6th round pick. And which is crazy, saying I would rather pass on my first running back off the board in the 6th round and take a 3rd wide receiver. Like that is where we're at in Dynasty.
It is. Truthfully, it's because we're seeing so much demand for the wide receiver. It's just pushing these values down. I mean, when you're getting Joe Mixon in the 6th round here, we're going to see what comes back to us on the 7th, and there's like no difference. So why am I reaching up for a guy that's in the same tier? Whenever I see D-Hop here and then dropping down to George Pickens, I know we're not really George Pickens believers, but then the wide receiver just falls off around here, and it's scary if you don't have those guys. I mean, I don't feel too comfortable over on my side either. I picked up the rookies, Olave and London. London's my wide receiver 1 in the class whenever we were coming out. Olave's probably moved into contention for the wide receiver 1. I think he probably has established himself as the wide receiver 1, at least in my mind. And then, picking up a rookie pick here, this is kind of where I was thinking as I was on the board here with the 108. This is a lot of the times where we've been seeing the wide receiver run really get mocked. And obviously, Kayshon Boutte or Butte, whatever you pronounce it, I guess we won't know for another year. We'll get another year of announcers calling Kayshon Boutte and Shake Your Booty playing on the outros from games now. That's fantastic. Glad he's going back to be with Brian Kelly and the family down there. But I was looking at this pick, seeing those wide receivers, what we've had mocked is JSN, Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Kayshon Boutte. And I'm looking at those guys. I'm looking at the guys that are actually going here. And I'm like, would I rather have a shot at one of those guys and hold the insulation of the draft pick in a future draft pick instead? And I've just decided on that. I'd rather hold the insulation and the value of a pick that's not going to have the potential to get injured. And then I can take any one of those wide receivers, pair it with a really young wide receiver core, and feel pretty good about a wide receiving core if that is the way this pick ends up playing out for me.
Yeah, and again, we test different things out. They're mock drafts, right? You want to kind of see how the board plays out, how things kind of pan out, what picks actually fall, and getting a 108 in that range. We talk about it all the time. It's like, oh, would you trade a mid to late, which is basically the 108 to 112 pick for Devonta Smith, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, all of these names, Hollywood. And like the resounding answer is like, that is what their value is. You're probably not getting more than a mid to late first for some of these guys. So I felt like that was good value. Same thing, D-Hop, Pickens, like, sure, you can. There are leagues where you're going to find that person that overpays or is willing to give you a mid to late first plus. But in all honesty, like that's pretty much in line with where it should be. So, I mean, you end up locking up two good quarterbacks. One is super young and still don't know what he is. Too young, wide receivers. You got an asset in Nick Chubb, which again, it's hard to pass on, but I'm sure at that point you're like, all right, well, what do I take here? Like,
it was a lot of what do I take. I'm not really a big mid round wide or mid round tight end guy, and all three of them went off right in front of me. So I was like, well, that potential options out the board, out the window. Even if I was going to take that, I looked at all the wide receivers that were coming off and kind of in this range around with that pick. I'm just like, none of these guys are really, they're still probably threshold wide receivers, but they're not really difference makers for me in what I'm in how I see them. So I wasn't really wanting to go that route. And then I'm looking at, the running backs that are producing right now, still, 26, 27 with Nick Chubb. And I figured it was where I was going. Kareem Hunt might be out the door. They'll probably bring in somebody along with him, but hope that this Browns offense can take a step forward. I know it didn't look pretty this week, but I think they will get on track. I don't think nobody should have been expecting them to go out and light it up for 40 points in Deshaun's first game back. If you were, I think that's a little bit, hopium thinking right there. So I think he'll get it back on track before the season ends, and Nick Chubb's going to be the focal point of this offense, even if they do have Deshaun in my mind. So that's why I went there. But I mean, heck, seeing Derrick Henry go off at the end of the next round, I'm like, I could have probably just had Derrick Henry. And
right.
I could have just had Derrick Henry with either of these two picks. And, my team is a little bit younger, but what does it matter? I can just take Derrick Henry, have a staple at my running back position. And then whenever I need a new one, any other running back that I can find won't be Derrick Henry level, but I can find another Derrick Henry, like, trade for the new Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, CMC, Derrick Henry, whenever they do show up. I can figure that spot out, but I cannot figure my wide receiver spot out as easily anymore.
I'm going to pull up the slide here, the next one, so we can kind of see what the next the full draft board looks like. But another one that stands out is Najee Harris. Like we've talked about it in our other drafts, that Najee was like the consensus, 201, 202. We've seen him go in the first round in startups, last year. Fell down to the 5th round, and here he is in the 6th round. And I do think that he's going to be a value. I don't think he's dead. I think it's an unfortunate situation. He's got a couple of years where he's, to prove himself, but it's had the hurt foot, has an awful offensive line, new quarterback, a rookie quarterback at that, who gotta build the chemistry. So you're not seeing the passing work. I think things do get figured out there, and that would probably be a really good value on Najee. And I'm just going to pull up the rest of the board here now at this point and kind of see why we feel the way we feel about some of these running backs. And it's like, if you would have passed on Chubb, I would have passed on Mixon. Like, I'm good with missing out on those guys. You still got Jacobs and Pierce, Ramondre, Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara. All these guys are in the 7th and 8th and 9th rounds. Look, I mean, you got Miles Sanders, the 6th leading rusher in the NFL this year, coming off the board in the 9th round. Like, oof. Would you rather Miles Sanders or the 112?
I probably want Miles Sanders, to be honest. Like once we start getting into that range, it's weird because even right now, it still doesn't really feel like Miles Sanders should be worth the first. And I'm not exactly sure why. Like he's getting the ground game ran on him right now, right? And we'll see what happens with him. But man, it's hard to not pass up like a top 10 rusher and say he's not worth a first, right?
I mean, he's
not even just a first, but literally the last first of the class as well. Like this is where we're projected to be taking A-Chain, Corum, any of these guys that are probably 3rd, 4th round draft picks come next year. Who do you want Miles Sanders at that? Right.
He's PPR, running back 13. And yeah, like it's crazy. I was kind of surprised to see him fall. Again, the ADP isn't sorted, so maybe he's the guy who slipped through the cracks. But yeah, I was really shocked to see him fall there. But like all the running backs, really, man. Like This is why you have no problem punting running back. And a lot of the big conversation today that we had brought up was, the running back turnover rate. 60% of running backs who are RB1s this year will not be RB1s next year. And this is consistent. This is a year over year thing, whether it's due to injury, whether it's due to, missing a few games, poor performance, unfortunate situations with offensive line, whatever the situation may be, there's a 60% turnover year over year. So you have guys like that, JT, he was RB1 overall. He's an RB2 this year. I don't see him catapulting up into that RB1 range unless he smashes down the stretch here. So he's not going to be an RB1 this year, but he could be next year. So, you can kind of look at these things. And when you really see running backs that are falling this far, there's just no reason to take the gamble on them early in the draft.
There's really not. The only thing I think we also mentioned this in one of our last videos where we did these is you do incur the risk with these older guys that
Yes.
if you're doing a startup this early, they have to make it healthy to the season next year, like 9 months from now. They have to be healthy going in because there's some of these guys that if they take an injury, like your pick before Sanders is Dalvin Cook. If Cook would take an injury, his value's dead. And it is never coming back, right? Although I guess probably maybe not ever coming back. We have seen Derrick Henry, broke the foot, and people were trying to sell for anything, and he's back up to just smashing and running over people like he always does. But the value will dip if any of these guys take an injury. So that is the one concern. But man, like if you can stay healthy here, Deshaun and your boy Russ, he's gonna potentially have your bounce back year that you've been calling for. We'll see.
We'll see.
And then 3 pretty solid wide receivers here and 3 solid running backs. I mean, this is a balanced team for going through 10 rounds. No rookie picks.
Nope.
You're not going to have one of those rookie picks to toy around with, and I don't think you really care.
I don't. And we've talked about this, like, in all honesty, if I have the 101, I'll take the pick. I'll make the Bijan pick, but I'm still willing to trade anything else. Do I have interest in Bryce Young and CJ Stroud? Yes. Do I have interest in Richardson and Levis? Yes. Gibbs? Yes. Like, there's guys that I like, but like, honestly, if I miss out, like, I'm not heartbroken. If I miss out on Bijan, that sucks. But after that, I'll trade anything. I have no problem trading it and getting rid of it or passing on it. And with where the players came off the board here, I wasn't looking to take, a rookie quarterback. So the 103, 104 weren't really an option. I could have taken Bijan there at the second round pick, but I was like, man, Mark Andrews is here, positional advantage, big time difference maker. Had to take it. So I do like the build out that I put together. It's not overwhelmingly great. It's not, I don't know. I have mixed emotions on it just because I do hope Russ bounces back. I have a lot of good reasons that he will, but if he doesn't, what are you getting for Russell Wilson? Like,
nothing. I mean, you're probably not even getting first next year. Like, if you might be able to trade Russ for, like, I don't even think you're trading Russ for the rookies during pre-draft process.
No.
Any of the first round rookie quarterbacks, I don't think you're trading them straight up. Nobody's trading to you straight up for Russ. I don't know if you're getting any first round pick for Russ whenever we get to the draft process next year. And at that point, if Russ comes out and stinks it up for another little bit, another good stretch of like the first 4 games, even the first game, honestly, like, because we are overreactionary, and I think especially with Russ and how much stink he has on him from this year, we're going to be very overreactionary if he comes out that first game and looks the exact same. Like, he's going to get like almost a Zach Wilson treatment. It's going to be bad.
It could get ugly. I mean, and that's a realistic possibility, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here and deny that. But there's also the possibility he gets back to being a top 10 quarterback like he was in the past. Lots of situations, injured offensive line, Javonte being out, Judy being out, Cortland Sutton being out, Tim Patrick being out. Like, You can new offense. Unfortunately, Hackett sucks. We saw his decision. We've seen his decision making from game one, and we're like, what is this guy doing? He had to turn over play calling. Like, it's not a good situation in Denver. It's just not. But he has job security. He's getting paid millions and millions. Like, what was it? $50 million a year, $40 million a year, something insane.
Something like
And
250 on the books, something like that.
yeah, he is locked and loaded in Denver. I'm willing to take the bet that things get worked out. They build around him. They put that, situation in a better spot going into next year. Again, it's assumption, and you assume that risk when you have Russell Wilson on your team or if you trade for him. But if you told me that you can trade Russell Wilson for a singular first, or heck, as you just mentioned, you might be able to get him for less than a single first in some places. I have no problem taking that risk myself. I am not telling people to go do this. I don't recommend this to people because it is a risk. It is a massive risk. But if your risk is 2 seconds in value, see ya. I'll get rid of those picks. Give me Russell Wilson in that opportunity. I'm a risky dynasty player. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But it is a risk I'd be willing to take. And those types of risks can pay off for you tenfold if you can get Russell Wilson to be what would be a second or third round startup value next year if he's in that T-Law range. So just things to kind of think about when you're talking about Russell Wilson. My opinion, I know you differ. You don't need to dive in and rain on my parade here.
No. I don't fully differ. I mean, like you said, he has the security. But yeah, I for right now would just rather lay my chips elsewhere. Another guy we've seen fall, though, is another guy that I took here. Mac Jones down in my 7-11 pick. Looking back on our draft a month and a half ago, he was up at the 410. So a full three rounds of fall. And honestly, I was torn with this pick because I love me some Mike Evans. I also was concerned possibly Dameon Pierce was going to come off around this pick as well. I don't have a tight end right now, so I was like, maybe Freiermuth, but I kept looking at Mac, and I'm like, I still like Mac, the QB. I just hate his situation. And, it's probably a lot of the same arguments that you have for Russ being able to bounce back. And so, yeah, just a guy that, you want to take your shot on. And I was fine taking a shot on, my third quarterback. I kind of went quarterback horde a little, somewhat in this one. I like the quarterback values where they were falling to me. And so, yeah, Mac Jones and Dameon Pierce there at that turn. Another interesting thing that I noticed after my pick here was 109 didn't come off for another 2.5 rounds here almost.
Big gap.
I'm not exactly sure why. I don't think there's like a big it's weird because like I don't really see a tier gap between the majority of these players, right? I think it's just a part where a lot of guys, we were seeing another quarterback run, seeing the next tight end run here. A lot of little mini like three positional player runs. And I think some of those were maybe influencing people to, try to grab that position before their next little tier break ended instead of moving on to the next pick. Or we might just have a kind of consensus drop off between the top 8 prospects of this class and the top 9 or the 9 and after prospects of this class.
Yeah, for me, I mean, we've talked about this in our rookie mock episode where we have the tier break. It's 101 tier break, 102, 103, 104 tier break. So you have like those 4 picks. If you're at the 105, man, like for me, I felt like the 105 was going to be the one that would drop a little bit further just because of the uncertainty of what is really going on with this draft. It could work out perfectly. Like hypothetical world, we have Will Levis, A-Rich get bumped up into that top tier with the other 2 quarterbacks of Stroud and Young. And we're talking about 4 quarterbacks, Bijan, and then Gibbs. So you have 6 spots where you might feel pretty good about. So that could happen. And then that would be a tier break as well. But right now, 101 break, 104 for me at least break, and then 105. I would probably say now with Booty going back to LSU, probably the 109 range. Um, I think I'd have a tier break after the 109. So yeah, it is a little interesting, but again, it's all player value and kind of what we see. There's not a lot of names to these picks yet, so it is challenging now to kind of assess why there's that big drop. But I was really shocked to see the second rounders coming off the board rather quickly.
Yeah, once the 109 came back in, it was like, oh yeah, we do have all these rookie picks, right? Oh crap! Like, let me get the rookie picks in now. Let me get them in. And so yeah, I do think we had a little bit of maybe a little bit of reach on some of these picks, but you look around at some of these guys, and a lot of them, like Dave Montgomery, Bateman, is he still worth back end first or early seconds? Jacoby Myers. I know people would probably a little bit more than a second right now for him, but 202's 201, 202 is also a pretty early second. And
Yep.
truthfully, what I'm noticing here, quarterback is void, but if I can send off seconds for some of these quarterbacks, I think I'm doing that just about every day of the week. And I think I need to go explore that, because if I can send just a straight second, no quarterbacks back, and I can go get myself Jared Goff, that needs to be something I'm exploring right now.
For sure. And I think that again, it's a startup, so it's a little bit different when you're assessing player value, but it's like, would you rather hoard the QBs or take the second round pick? And so it's like, yeah, same thing with the teams we have currently built in our non-startup rosters. Like if you can send off a second for, Tannehill, for Goff, for Aaron Rodgers being there, like basically a back end first. Like if you can get him for a second, he is a little riskier because of the retirement risk, but I think he's playing. He's going to stick around. The way he's talking about his injury, the way that they're talking about everything, it's the hey, I'm going to make sure I'm healthy for down the stretch here and then for next year. Like that's the conversation that's being had. It's not, yeah, this is my last few games of my career. I'm going to go out there and play with my messed up thumb, my messed up hand, and my separated ribs. Like he's going to make sure that he's healthy and good to go for the future. So, buy low candidate.
I mean, I made a trade for him in our USFL Best Ball League here not too long ago. Within the last week, I think, sending off a package where Daniel Jones, Burks, before he had his blow up game, unfortunately, and and I was getting back the stack of Lazard and Rogers, and then I also got thrown in D Hop while I was trying to make a push in and get a little bit deeper at wide receiver. So, yeah, I was actually buying into this, and I was trying to start that deal before it fully came out that he had the broken thumb, because I was like, hey, just watching him, I was watching a couple of his interviews on McAfee, and I could just tell like something is just wrong, to the point of nothing is healthy there. We knew it was injured, but I was like,
Yeah.
man, I think he's just going to have the surgery. And I cannot see him as being somebody who he's a very prideful guy. I think we can all admit that, even those who don't hate him in the media. I'm not an Aaron Rodgers hater, but I think he does have a lot of pride that he takes in his work. And so being a back-to-back MVP and then putting out a season like this, they would just be incredibly hard for him to just go into the sunset and retire. So, yeah, I don't mind the pick, but it does obviously carry some risk. Another quarterback that we saw here go off, kind of unfortunately for a guy JRH or JHR here in the sixth slot, picking the Matthew Stafford pick. We knew the injuries were a concern, and then I think it was a couple days later after this, we just got the news that he's going on IR for the rest of the year. And
Yeah,
man, going back to that QB carousel video where I was just kind of like half-heartedly saying this guy could retire a couple months back,
possibility.
I'm getting over 50% now. I'm at like 60% now that he's never playing football again.
We'll see. I'm not quite there yet, but it is still a very, very good possibility. Like I'm not quite 50%. Maybe I'm 50-50. I don't know. I can talk myself into it on live as we go through this. But man, if he's back, he's good. And again, it's tough to say for sure. I don't know that he's going to want to go out like this either. He did win a Super Bowl, so there's kind of a little bit less incentive for him to come back. Like Aaron Rodgers might want another, like one last go at it, right? Like maybe one or two more goes if everything goes well. But yeah, man, Stafford, that is a very unfortunate situation there in LA. I think that whole Ram situation is just awful. So it sucks to suck, I guess.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's we do have a lot of fun with these startups, and this one's just a mock. We don't have any money on it, but it's the risk you take whenever you're doing these
Yeah.
startups this early, because we don't know. We've got plenty of time, and these are happening within days after we're doing our startup. You've got another 9 months to sit and hold your breath for all of these guys that are sitting on your roster. And again, just to reinforce, that's kind of what we were saying with the value that these picks hold, is that pick can't get injured. Pick can't get injured
Right.
until you make it after the draft. So you get yourself about a 5 months of buffer up until middle of April, whenever we would be doing this startup mock. It does add a little bit more value to these picks.
So as we wrap things up here, I want to kind of look at individual team breakdowns and some of the teams that maybe stand out to you that you felt constructed their roster well, or really you're like, man, I'd love to have had this team. And while you kind of check that out, the one that really kind of stood out to me based on where we've have been and what we've been talking about has been Barry. And we joked at first where it's like, hey, you're going to have Justin Jefferson, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill. You're passing on quarterback. It did work out where he got Kirk Cousins, he got Derek Carr, and then was able to solidify wide receiver with Jefferson, Hill, D Hop, Amari Cooper, Tyler Lockett. He ended up getting that rookie pick, back to back rookie pick. So the 112 and the 203. I know we've talked to him about this specifically, and he's like, yeah, maybe I would have shifted and gone after a running back. But in all honesty, like, I love the draft. Love it. You got the positional difference maker in Travis Kelce. You've got some difference makers at wide receiver. And then there's still some insanely good running backs on the board where he's going to be able to get value in around 11, 12, 13, and beyond, or even use the 112 and 203 on rookie running backs, where those guys are going to be able to hit his lineup. Love what he did. Again, it was a gamble because he passed on quarterback, but it did pay off. He was able to get Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr. But I think if he would have missed on one of those and it would have ended up with like Russell Wilson, he probably doesn't feel as good about it.
Yeah. And those are your two. If you're going to bank on any middle round quarterbacks, as far as what we've seen in our mocks, this is kind of where these guys are going in rounds 4, rounds 5. This little kind of trio here, and we might see a couple of others sneak up or sneak down as they're getting injured or other things like that. Those are the two I want. And he ended up getting them both, and it paid off beautifully. I will say the team does have a bit of an age issue, but in the way we play, don't really care. And
Going
truthfully,
for it.
with the running backs as well, you're only starting 2. I think one thing we might actually start doing in these mocks is specifying how many starters we have, because I do think that changes things. Where if it's like a start, 8, and now I don't have any top running backs, that's going to hurt more, and it's going to hurt a lot more to not have quarterbacks, especially in what we play everything in Superflex, because those quarterbacks in start 8 are probably like 40% of your points every week. And if
I
you
think we
don't
did
have a top
specify
2,
start 10 or 11 on this one, if
actually,
I recall.
I think we did. I think we specified the start 11 on this one.
Yeah.
We'll have to go back and check that one, but either 10 or 11. And so whenever you get into those little bit deeper where you have a couple extra roster spots, you don't need as many points from each spot if you're getting these guys like Jefferson, Hill, D-Hop, Amari Cooper, and Tyler Lockett that are all top 15 point per game wide receivers, I think, so far this year. I think Lockett might be the lowest one at 13, but just some absolutely smash contributors to your lineup. And then you don't need as many points for running back position. You can just have the depth, have 45% of your bench just be running back dart throws, and whichever ones are starting that week, they have as good of a chance to put up as many points as probably some of these guys that were drafting up here in the 6th and 7th rounds week over week. So that is a team. We talked through this one a little bit beforehand. Absolutely love what he did with this draft. The one that I wanted to highlight out here was Ty's team, actually, and it went pretty similar, with the exception of a few things. He did pick up an extra quarterback, which I love doing. Unfortunately, I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, not knowing that Jimmy G just broke his foot, and I'm going to say that he drafted it well at the time. So a little bit of a caveat for this one, but we did not have this news at the time for Jimmy G. So I really liked this team at the time. He's getting the third quarterback. Daniel Jones and Jimmy G were both locked and loaded, going to be starters next year. I have a little bit more concerns with Jimmy G now with the injury, because the 49ers already had injury concerns about this guy. Now does the rest of the NFL as well. And what type of contract does that, vet him next year? Does he even go back to the team to just say, hey, I'm fine with being a career backup now? Because I don't think he's going to be the starter over Trey Lance if those two are there next year. And so it's definitely a more scary proposition. But obviously, like I said, benefit of the doubt. Love the three guys that he was going to be taking right here to be his three starters for the future. Starts it off really nicely with Diggs and Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra, I was way too low on. Have absolutely fallen in love with what I've seen from Amon-Ra. Don't even really care what Jameson Williams starts to show. I just love me some Amon-Ra. The guy is an absolute target machine. He is a BAM tier wide receiver for me at this point. And then love the depth at wide receiver down the board. Allen, Myers, and Godwin locking up a very nice tight end who will probably be my tight end. Probably be, oh God, I'm not going to say things that are going to get me banned. Three,
yeah.
He could actually. There's probably a good chance that he's going to be my tight end 3 next year.
All right,
but looking at this, I mean, then just getting the lockdown running back in Barkley as well, and then just getting the anchor at running back, and kind of like Barry's team, where Barry's just going to be, he got an extra wide receiver that's going to be an anchor for him. Ty went here, and he's got the one anchor RB, the hero RB, as some call it, and then just going to fill the back end of this roster with the second round worthy guys at the running back position. Really like this team.
Yeah, I think, as I've been looking at some of these teams, I feel like, even as you talked about Barry, I feel like we need to talk about roster construction. We do need to talk about league settings and how to optimize our lineups, whether we're doing a startup or we are in, an existing dynasty league, how to kind of construct our rosters in a specific way. I know Scott Connor, if you listen to Destination Devy Radio, go to their podcast and find Scott Connor's episodes, the roster construction series. Incredible listens. There's specific episodes on each position, and then there's the overall roster construction that he kind of breaks down specifically for I think it's a start 10 Superflex Dynasty League. But we do want to dive into some of that as well, talk about roster construction, talk about how to position yourself for the future while maintaining value on your team, and making sure there's certain positions you don't mess around with, a la quarterback. So, this was a really fun exercise. Again, it's only 10 rounds, kind of seeing how people do start and what could come. I would say everyone had a pretty good path. There are some player values that I'm not quite on board with yet. The one I wanted to kind of point out, and I just had a question for you on, are you in on Christian Watson?
Ooh, okay, yeah, we can wrap this one up on some Christian Watson talk.
He was the seventh rounder here, which
the dude
went between the 108 and 109
can score touchdowns. He has been, what is he now? 6 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks of football, I believe, for him that he's played at least. And
I'm pretty sure
he's done it now with 2 quarterbacks. I mean, the one that he caught was freaking Jordan Love whenever he had to step in for Aaron Rodgers.
7-4.
7-4. I don't know which is better, 6-3 or 7-4. Should have gotten that eighth one. Should have gotten the eighth one. But no, I want to, and I'm very close to buying in all the way. But I still want to see him produce in terms of an overall target share of the team. I want to see a full, healthy squad out there with him. I believe we still, Romeo Dobbs is still out with his ankle injury, and I believe on IR. We don't know. I haven't heard anything about him coming back yet. So hopefully we're able to see a couple of regular season games down the stretch here, and NFL regular season games where we can see both of those guys on the field, because we know touchdown is the least sticky stat in fantasy football. The touchdowns come, the touchdowns go. Ask Deontay Johnson this year. They've gone, and they've nowhere to be found. And so could it just be that the ball goes a different place? Freaking Mercedes Lewis catches the next 2 touchdowns for this team. So like it's not a sticky stat, and I don't want to be investing fully on somebody who's just going to be scoring me touchdowns. I think we've seen the one person who's been able to really do it year over year has just been Adam Thielen, and he's fallen off this year, probably more so due to a little bit of age, and Justin Jefferson's just an absolute baller. And so I'm not going to buy in yet, but I am on watch with Christian Watson.
Yeah, he's an elite. I think what he's elite at. He's a playmaker, and that's the big thing. I mean, I think he's had 4 catches in each of the last 4 games. Yeah, 4, 4, 4, and 3, and that has netted him 107, 48, 110, and 48 yards. Crazy thing though is the 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 1 touchdown, and it is the least sticky stat, but the dude makes plays. So we'll see how that pans out for him long term. We'll see how that continues down the stretch here. I'm not quite ready to take him over. Like he was taken over Mike Evans, over Tyler Lockett, Deontay Johnson. I don't know that I can do that. It may have been a reactionary pick right there, but it might actually pan out for the betterment of that team. And if Christian Watson is a elite player and does get the target share and continues at the pace that he's on, minus the touchdowns, hey man, 100-yard game every other game, you're going to be successful in the NFL.
Yep. The only thing that I went to go find these stats is you were talking through it. In those 2 100-yard games, his long receptions were 58 and 63 yards. So half of the yardage coming on one play it's probably another very unsticky stat. He is, he's the athletic freak on the field. We've seen it, but we see a lot of athletics freaks all over the field, and they aren't going for 63 yards every other game, right? It's just not something that's sustainable. So want to see the consistent yardage, the consistent targets, and see him ball out with like a 12 target, 8 reception for 102 game. And then if you put the touchdowns on top of it, great.
Yep.
Will be fantastic. But he hasn't eclipsed 8 targets yet. He's gotten 8, 6, 6, and 7 in the last 4 games, turning it into 4, 4, 4, and 3 receptions. That's just not normally how 7 touchdowns come within 4 games.
Yeah. So I looked up, I was looking at Claypool because that's kind of what it reminded me of. Claypool had his rookie year where he had the 9 touchdowns, or I think he ended up having double-digit touchdowns with his rushing touchdowns, but he had 9 receiving, and I think he had 3 on the ground or something like that. And he ended up being a wide receiver 2 that year. Everyone was super excited. Again, big, athletic, playmaker, consistency. I need consistency out of Christian Watson. It has been 4 games. See that team healthy. Promising, though. He's probably not a bust based on what we've seen, but I want to see some consistency before I start bumping him up the boards.
Yeah, so that's all it is. Definitely on watch with him though. Good player.
Anything you want to wrap up with? Anything you want to touch on before we go? Any individual players? Any teams?
I don't think I've got too much here that really needs to be broken down at the very end. I'd like to see how the rest of the quarterback landscape goes beyond this 10th round. Is the 10th round, is the 10 round limit pushing some of these guys up the board still? I don't think so. I think most of these guys, like I said earlier, if I can buy them for some of these guys straight up, I would almost do it in any super flex league, right? Like if I can just send away Jacoby Myers and get myself back Jared Goff in super flex, like I'd probably be hard pressed not to do that one right now.
The
But
name
an interesting theory to see if it would change if we go past these 10 rounds.
you talked about quarterback, the name that popped out to me that I was looking for, and I was like, wait, I know he's old, and I know people are scared about it, but Tom Brady didn't get drafted, and it might be a short term thing. Maybe he'd be one of the next quarterbacks off the board. But if you're telling me I could send away a second round pick for Tom Brady, I mean, that dude just divorced his wife. Like, he's probably playing football for another year or two. I know he's playing next year. Let me tell you that. I know he's playing next year, but he's probably playing for 2 more years. So I'm a
That
little
is one.
shocked there.
Yeah. As I'm looking at it and as I'm thinking through it, I'm like, it probably wouldn't be egregious if you sent a second round pick to, let's say, a team. Tom Brady hasn't been anything spectacular this year. Mid QB2 at best, probably back end QB2 in all honesty. And so maybe that team isn't in the playoffs, trying to get younger. Throw him a second round pick, throw him one of the other, DS or the dog shit best ball dart throw tight ends or quarterbacks. Throw him one of those and see if you can get a Tom Brady. I don't hate that one because
Yep.
I was like, I was kind of thinking through it. I'm like, is he gonna come back? No, he's coming back. There's no way that he's going to be living out the bachelor life and just going to bars, picking up chicks, and not slinging the pigskin around. That's what he really loves doing. So yeah, I'm honestly right there with you. If you're looking at Ryan Tannehill, Zach Wilson, or Tom Brady,
Yep. Give me Brady.
I think I'm going to take Brady. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep.
He was probably pretty buried on this board. Yeah, no, this was still from preseason. I was thinking back to whenever he was going back
The
around like
ADP.
25.
Yeah.
Remember that point of last offseason when he was retired for a bit and he was going in like round
That
20,
month.
25? Oh, that's some value right there. That is called hashtag value.
For sure. But yeah, we're going to be doing these more and more. Hit us up in the comments if you are interested in being part of these. We'll break it down from different angles in the future as well, looking, like I said, at roster construction specifically and maybe kind of diving into some of that. We'll be doing rookie mocks. So please put it in the comments if you are interested. We'll hit you up here on YouTube. We'll add you through Sleeper, and then we'll make sure we can get you involved in some of these mocks. Any last things before we wrap up?
Nope, I think that's it. Wrap us on out of here, man.
Perfect. Please like, subscribe, and thank you so much for joining us here in the Fantasy Draft Room.